Good morning. So this is me. We're going to talk about parallel. If you want to know more about me, I too have a QR code. You're welcome. And that is also me. There's basically two pictures of me, one with long hair and one with short hair in front of the same painting, because I cut my hair like once a year. So I'm showing you both versions. What we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a little bit of what I do for my clients, but y'all are a bunch of creatives. So I'm going to do it a little more playfully, perhaps. But first, cats. This is an important interlude, not only because I have a laser pointer, I do, but I have a theory that there are three types of cat people. People who are obsessed with their cats. Raise your hand if you're obsessed with your cats. I'm obsessed with cats and I don't even have one, so. People who are part cat, so they request affection as needed. They clearly express their boundaries, maybe a little aggressively. See also. And then there are people who like to find and get in boxes, okay? Now you can be all three. Today I am doing this. I'm getting in a box because we creatives love design constraints. So my constraint today is parallel. So what comes to mind when you hear parallel? Shout out some ideas. Math. Lines. Space. Train track. I love it. Any others? I love it. Okay. I only had 4. So we got parallel lines, parallel circuits, parallel parking. I thankfully don't have to do this very often anymore. And parallel universes. So the consistent sort of definition, right, is that we have side by side with a consistent space between. Pretty straightforward. But let's take it a little further. When I hear parallel, I also think of words that sound like it. So parallax. Parallax is the fact that something further away from you moves slower than the thing closer to you, right? So that Giphy is showing you if you're moving, say on a train. I take a lot of train trips. I'm here for it. That is a parallax experience. That thing that's further away from you that appears to move slower than the thing that is closer to you. And then if we look at longitude and latitude here, they're parallel, except if you get up here, some of them stop being parallel. Well, that's weird. So they're parallel at some point. And at the human scale, they're sort of always parallel. But perspective can shift. What is parallel? I swear there's not anything other than caffeine in the coffee this morning. These are parallel, but with an addition of time. So we have parallel coming towards us or shifting up and down. And we also have a time delay in 2 forms of parallel. Those gradients going horizontal or the bars moving vertical. So just let your mind marinate on this a little bit. I will give you a reprieve here in a second. Anything come to mind when you saw those images? Anything at all? Space, motion, perspective? Mushrooms? Oh, optical illusions. That's better. That's better than what I said. But you can probably get there with mushrooms. What was that? Infinity. Yes. So now to get to something a little less psychedelic, working in parallel. What I do in my work is I work with my clients' parallels. Their past, their present, and their future. Right? They have past experience, they have present needs and demands, and they have an aspirational future. They came to me because they're looking for help with something, right? And one of the things that I'm tasked with doing is helping them understand their parallels. One of the titles I've been referred to is Chief Reframing Officer. That is focused mostly on reframing their past experience. But often, it's about reframing their aspirational future as well. If someone were to ask you, what's one thing you would like more of in your work, or less of in your work, what might be that one thing that would make your life better? Less email. Less Excel? Sure. And more in person, right? We have these specific things, and then we have to figure out why. Is that because past experience has made those things icky? Is it because practices have made things feel like that's the right thing to do? I like to remind people, this is all made up. All of this. So we can make it up again differently. And that's where this parallel world, parallel thinking is really valuable. So we can think about future and past as those lines. And if we think of this as sort of a figure and a void, the space, the consistent space in the middle is the present. And some might say, well, doesn't the past and the future touch at the present? I think there's a space that we get to hold in our present tense. Some of us, myself included, spend a lot of time leaning heavy on that future, and we miss a lot of stuff because we're not in the middle. And if you've ever watched anything on a track, you know it curves by leaning. That's fine. That's how we bob and weave through life. But maybe this isn't quite how you think about past, present, and future and their relationships. So, bringing back to trains, past and present, and the aspirational future is that place. We know train tracks are parallel. We know they don't actually intersect, but there's a perspective that makes them appear to. But the future is always further out. So then, what's the space in between in this version? Any ideas? The story, possibilities, direction, feelings. I think it's all of these things. But I would also say that it is most certainly your values. And the train tracks here, that progression towards the future, are your decisions. Those can be tiny decisions. Am I going to wear jeans or am I going to wear corduroy? It can be big decisions. Am I leaving the house today? Am I changing jobs? So, values in practice. There are a couple of words. There are a few words, 3 to 5 words. My current words are curiosity, play, and expression. Now, I say current words because when I think of my values, I don't have words in my head. I have an amalgamation of images, memories. It's just a slurry of things. And so the words that quite most accurately describe it can evolve over time. So if you had asked me, say, a year ago, a couple of those words might have instead have been learning or kind, because those made more sense in terms of capturing what it is that I value. And the key thing about practice, when you're living your values, you have to know what it looks like in practice. How many of you, if I asked you your 3 values, could just shout them out? A couple of you? Yeah? Some of you might need some time to think about it. How many of you have never thought about your values? There are people who are like, oh, it's just the life that I live. I don't think that's true. So the key about knowing your values is figuring out what they look like in practice. And the key of knowing what they look like in practice is they make decisions easier. So curiosity, play, and expression. Curiosity can look like asking questions. The hard one for me is pausing before I create a story in my head, because I'm going to solve it. I already know what it is, and it's this, and it's probably terrible for me. 5 whys. So Common design practice, you ask why 5 times to get to the motivation. Play. Learning, science tells us, is one of the fastest ways to learn is to play. This is why kids play. They are learning agents. All they are designed to do is to learn. And we don't lose that as we get older. We just disincentivize it. So play is one of the ways I keep learning. I also wear silly sunglasses because I want to walk down the street wearing my silly sunglasses and see someone get a smile on their face. And you're welcome. And also, I get to see them smile. Congratulations, right? Imagination, not the scary kind where my mind is running crazy and being like, oh, it's terrible things. But what if is one of my favorite startings for many thoughts and expression. Clothing choices, appreciating others' clothing choices and their forms of expression, and writing regularly. I say writing regularly because I write on Medium, mostly post for free. So if you don't have a Medium account, you can still read my stuff. But all of my values bubble up to the 2 things that I believe guide human behavior: agency and potential. Agency is your ability to do. Potential is your capacity to imagine. Those 2 things can shift by what you experience in life. You might not think you have as much agency as you do. You may feel like you can't imagine something different than where you are. But being able to reconnect with one of those or lean on the other when you are compromised truly allows you to still have capacity to make decisions, to see clearly, to hold a space, a consistent space between 2 truths, you and outside you. Holding that space so that you aren't affected by the outside world because you have your values and you can diffuse whatever's coming at you by remembering them or by practicing them so easily that it runs script for you. You don't have to freak out about everything because you automatically eliminate a bunch of options because you're like, well, that doesn't seem like it's encouraging human expression, so I'm going to say no. That doesn't look very playful. I don't see how that could encourage play. Or I'm in a situation that makes me so miserable, but I want to play my way into a place where I can decide how to emerge a little bit better today than I was yesterday. So this is all metaphor play. I love metaphors. I stopped myself from putting like 40 versions of what parallel can represent because I didn't want to do that to you. But I'm curious if there are metaphors in life that you found useful because I loved playing with parallel and my brain is bubbling with all of the different ways that parallel can inform my thinking and the values that I bring to my clients, to my relationships, to the world. So I'm curious about any favorite metaphors folks might have. You don't have metaphors at the top of your head? Come on. It's fun. Let's think of some. I may be using English words wrong. That's entirely fair. Metaphors, analogies, similes, for me, they're all metaphors. What's your simile?
No, well, the one that I use a lot when I work and also with myself is the villain is the hero of his own story.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because now you're making me think of the drama triangle, the hero, the villain, and the victim. Interesting. Okay, yeah? Right, like that, like you're multiple people, a collective community.
Instead of saying like all of me, part of me is this. I find it useful when trying to describe what a job is, like a specific job, someone not in that field. So like I was a first assistant director on a film
managed to convince a lot of much stronger teenagers to help them build the sandcastle.
Okay. Nice, nice. That sounds like a lot to help just emotionally manage yourself. Yeah.
Sort of bouncing off of what you were saying, I remember talking to a friend years ago about trying to figure out work-life balance. And one of the ways that I started thinking about it is that we all have multiple gardens. And not every garden is blooming in every single season. And sometimes the garden needs to be weeded or needs to be watered more than another. And it just depends on where you are and where your garden is.
Right, what the season is. These images here are from the Leadership Tarot deck. I originally started this because I was collecting metaphors to help my clients. They were trying to be like, I want to be less stressed. And I'm like, cool, what does that look like? And we needed to find something specific enough that it could orient them to have a future point, but vague enough that we could still figure out what that meant in practice, in their context, right? And so most of these come from various books. 8 Dimensions of Leadership, which is a DISC-oriented book. Emergent Strategy, about collective organizing, but also words from non-English language that just capture something that we don't quite have the term for in English. And one day I was using the just clip art versions of visual representations of these concepts, and the client referred to it as Leadership Tarot. And I was like, I'm going to use that. Thank you. Technically, it's an Oracle deck, but there's this company called Oracle. And if you have leadership and Oracle, it's really bad SEO. So these are some of my favorite metaphors, right? I will use these personally. I had a bit of a health crisis a few years ago, and had to do a blood draw for a second time. I do not like having my blood drawn. I will pass out. I'm like, give me the baby chair, all the stuff. And we were headed for the blood draw, the second one. And my partner was like, okay, let's do a 3-card draw for where we're going, like what we're about to do. 3-card draw here means context, style, and vibe. That is how I think of leadership. What is the context where the leadership is happening? What is the style, the relationship of that leadership? And then the vibe, what is the outcome? How do you want to feel? So I'm walking to LabCorp, doing a metaphoric 3-card draw in my head. And I'm fairly certain that that's how I managed to do that blood draw, because I was like, okay, the phlebotomist. I don't remember what it is now, but it served me well. And some days I'll just pull 1 card and deal with the things that come up that day through that lens. Okay, what if it's murmuration? Synchronicity. How if I think of this as like a lot of little things all happening at once? But that can be beautiful, right? I can diffuse, I can reintroduce the space between me and the thing. Keep it parallel, so I have a clear and consistent ability to see. I'm gonna keep going back to parallel. I told you I'm a cat in a box. But yeah, so that's what I like to do, and I hope that metaphors help you, or you walk away from today thinking metaphorically. Thank you.